Now it's time for our energy update with Dan McTeague, president at Canadians for Affordable Energy. All yours, Dan.
Well, hello again, Teresa. And we're having this very long Family Day weekend, long weekend, much deserved in many parts of the country, quite cold. And, where I am here in Ontario, of course, we see that we've had a lot of snow. So I guess climate is back, to use a word. But it also means that prices aren't going to be that crazy at the pumps this week. We are coming up to the mid time here in the month of February. I know it's cold for everybody. Natural gas prices are up. Prices for everything are up, including carbon taxes, which are going to increase on April 1st because Canadians really love them, even though people like Mark Carney say it's just because we don't understand them. Otherwise, it's a success. And by the way, I think a lot of people now are looking at their bills, natural gas and propane and others, and saying, the carbon tax rebate is not $700 more than what I'm putting into it. It's the other way around. But now I digress. Canadians are now faced with pretty substantially high gas prices. This time last year, prices were about, let's say, about 10 cents a liter less. And the reason they're more expensive this year is, yes, the carbon tax went up 4 cents a liter, but the Canadian dollar. Last year at this time, one Canadian dollar would buy, or at least 134 pennies would buy a $1 US. This year it's 142, 143. So that has increased the price of every commodity, most notably gasoline, diesel, heating oil, and pretty much every other commodity you can imagine, because these things are priced in US terms, or the world benchmark, if you will, for a lot of commodities. So what we're looking for this week is prices to remain at the levels that they are right now. And, we've seen a bit of an increase, a spike in places like Vancouver, went up to 197.9, now down to about 191. Look for prices to remain about the $1.90 there, as I don't see much in the way of anything that's going to move prices up or down more significantly than, say, range bound 2 or 3 cents a liter. So best case scenario, 187. Worst case scenario, 190, 191, exactly what you're paying now. Same for Vancouver, Victoria, which of course has prices that are about 6 cents a liter less just on the taxes alone. Rest of the interior BC in the 165, 170 range, 175 in some locations, depending how far north you go. Alberta will remain, 140, 142 in Calgary, and 133 to 135 in Edmonton. Of course, it's less expensive in Edmonton because refineries are right in your backyard. And we know that in Saskatchewan, prices rarely change, so remaining in the $1.50, while neighboring Manitoba, which once enjoyed the lowest prices in the country because they had no provincial sales tax, will still remain, resolutely in the $1.50, $1.54 range, pretty much where Saskatchewan is. Now, they rely on the what's called the central U.S. Midwest gas prices. When we shift over to Ontario, Northwest Ontario still relies on the same matrix, on the same pricing from that market, from the Midwest market out of Chicago, the spot market. So the prices in Thunder Bay tend to be a little different all the way over to the Manitoba border. And it's for that reason that they will probably not see much in the way of change. However, the rest of Ontario, I think, is looking at about a 2 cent increase. After Sunday, we could start to see prices drop, back to the $1.57 range, although we get a small bump on February the 15th on the Saturday, back to 157. That's true of Ottawa, London, Toronto, and Sarnia, of course, Kitchener. What we do note, and a lot of people are saying, well, Dan, your price prediction isn't exactly great. Well, that's because gas stations have decided it's a great thing to try to compete by getting rid of the retail margins. You see, gas stations control about 9 cents a liter. They often suppress that by 5 or 6 cents a liter and make the money up on beef jerky and coffee and donuts and whatever you buy in their store. That's how they make up the difference, when otherwise they'd be losing money. If they lose money, their rich uncle that spotted them the money, or their bank, will be knocking on the door saying, listen, you're not able to make ends meet. So that's really the difference. When I give a gas price prediction, I assume the gas station has to make 8 or 9 cents a liter to pay for credit card honoring, to pay for either loyalty rewards programs, pay their staff, pay themselves, pay their municipal taxes, and yes, the electricity, turn on the pump. So all these things need to be taken into consideration. People say, well, your predictions aren't accurate. No, they're accurate. They're absolutely accurate. But I can't predict what's in the mind of a gas station owner when in the afternoon they drop at 3 or 4 cents a liter. I'm not good at mind reading. I call it gas bar shenanigans, and it's always something where you have to be sort of in that plus minus situation. Now, let's go to Quebec. Quebec's always 10 cents a liter more than Ontario because of the amount of tax which they pay, especially in Montreal. So if it's $1.57, $1.56 in Toronto, it's going to be $1.67, $1.66 in Montreal. Again, we have some stations that go a lot lower than that. Quebec City is an example. Quebec City doesn't have a 2.2 cent a liter transit tax for their subway, for their metro. So that makes it a little bit cheaper in Quebec City. As for the Maritimes, well, it's a regulated price, and they use different methodologies and different formulas. In Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland, they actually think they can create a synthetic market and give people the impression that they're protecting them. I won't hit too hard on them, but I find it a little strange that people will actually put their more faith in the minds of bureaucrats as to how gas prices and international commodity prices take place than relying on the markets. Now, that of course occurred at a time and a place when there was no gas price prediction. So 30 years ago, you didn't have Dan McTeague inventing gas price predictions, pioneering and championing it. So they have their own methodologies. Usually, my view is the markets prevail, and they have to prevail. But because they make it over 5 days or 7 days, and they have different formula, they can sometimes wind up with a very different price. And I'm explaining that, Teresa, because a lot of people from the Atlantic province say, well, you weren't exactly 100% on. Again, I can't guess what's in the minds of bureaucrats, and there's just far too many formulas that they use, which actually amount to nonsense. And there's a reason why the rest of North America has said no to this, except those on the far left who believe that it's good to socialize the price of everything. It also means that the price of everything doesn't necessarily reflect the value you're getting, especially when prices drop and you still have higher prices in Atlantic Canada. It's also the area that's subject not only to one, but two carbon taxes, where it's costing you in carbon taxes alone roughly about 30 cents a liter. So all in all, prices across the country are going to remain, rather stable this week. Nothing crazy, but in 6 weeks from now, we have a couple things happening, Teresa. The carbon tax, 4 cents a liter right across the country, except Quebec has its own system. And of course, right after that, the switch over from winter to summer gasoline, that's a thing. That should put prices up average in the another 10 cents a liter, more or less. So that's it for this week. Let's talk next week as we closer to that date and see how close we get to what implications we will have if the tariffs are reimposed on Canada.